Hello, I'm Faith, and welcome to Faith's Take, where I talk about anything and everything that I find interesting. And welcome to the first video in my new series called Unpopular Opinions, where I talk about, you guessed it, my personal unpopular opinions. This week I'm going to talk about why I hate Toy Story 3, which if you missed last week's video, I made abundantly clear by the end of it. Now, why do I hate this movie? Because it ruins a franchise I grew up with, and I mean genuinely ruins it. Not like today, when something gets rebooted or remade and people are like, oh, that ruins my childhood. And this doesn't ruin my childhood either, but it does ruin the franchise because it takes the lessons that we learned in the first two movies, all the things we invested in, and throws them out the window. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let's jump right into this. Why I hate Toy Story 3. Now I know a vast majority of people found this movie to be a marvel, a masterpiece, a triumph of cinema, but I think it is one of the worst sequels I've ever seen. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. There aren't many of us, but we do exist. And I can't speak for all of us, but outside of the animation, I can't think of a single thing that I liked about this movie. In 2010, I was 15 and had been quote-unquote self-studying movies for 7 years by then, so I was already able to analyze writing and the tropes and know when I was being emotionally manipulated. And that, my friends, is all that Toy Story 3 is. Nothing but emotional manipulation, and they know exactly what they're doing. But allow me to backtrack a little bit. I grew up with the original two movies like everybody else, and I really like them, especially the second one. They were absolute game changers for the entire film industry, and I think they're well written, very well acted, and Toy Story 2 is when Pixar really started to have at least one really relatable, or at least realistic, tearjerker scene in every movie. But keep in mind what I just said, relatable and realistic, and that is what Toy Story 3 severely lacks. The conflict in Toy Story 3 is that the toys want to stay at the daycare because they'll be loved and played with forever, and Woody tries to convince them that they need to go back to Andy even if they'll be put in storage until he has children to pass the toys down to. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't that the exact same story as the second movie in reverse? That movie's about Woody deciding he'd rather go off to a place where he'll be appreciated forever instead of going back to Andy, and Buzz and the gang having to convince him why it's more important to be there for Andy. And this is the same thing with just a bigger obstacle to get home, and Woody is the one who thinks going home is best. What is the point of that when we learned the same thing 11 years prior? And if that weren't enough, let's get to just how disrespectful this film is to the original two, and it can be summed up in this one little clip.
We've lost friends along the way.
Bo Peep?
Yeah, even Bo.
And there it is. No effort, no conversation about what happened, and it is never addressed again. This just shows that in this film, they don't care about the characters' backstories that they set up. They're just supposed to be used in any way that's convenient, even if it means some of them completely disappear with barely a word. Now that we've discussed a bit about the old, let's discuss the new. I can't remember almost any of these characters. Like, at all. They all just blend in my head to one collective new toys for this movie status. Pixar's greatest asset has always been their memorable characters, and even if you've only seen a movie once, you should be able to remember them. And I've tried, but I just don't. The only two characters I remember are Ken, because Michael Keaton is amazing, and the bad guy. And again, isn't he basically the prospector from the second movie? The whole gist of his plan is to keep the toys there for his own gain, and that's exactly what happened in Toy Story 2. I don't get it. You had 11 years to come up with anything else and you didn't. You just made him more sadistic this time around. And finally, the biggest reason I go from thinking this is a terrible sequel to I hate this with a burning passion is the emotional manipulation. And I have a hypothesis about this. They got greedy. Now this is all conjecture on my part, but please hear me out. Since Toy Story 2, they've had great success in pulling off sentimental moments, and what movie came out right before Toy Story 3? Up. The Pixar movie most famous for making its audience cry. Now why don't I have a problem with that movie's high emotions? Because they're relatable and realistic. There are people who grow old together, who can't have kids, who never get to see their dreams come true together. And if you haven't gone through any of this, you've certainly met someone in real life who has. And the way they handled it in that movie all makes sense and work from a story perspective. And that is simply not the case with Toy Story 3. I feel like Pixar saw the love Up got for the first 10 minutes and thought, we can top that. And they've tried it several times since. Now Up came out only a year before Toy Story 3, so I could be totally wrong, but I could easily see them shoving an extra sap and intensity where it didn't belong last minute, just so they could scar the audience even more. Not only do we have basically the equivalent of a torture scene, but they're toys, so that's okay, and a needlessly intense near-death scene where you know they are going to die, but you have such a sappy, awful ending that negates every single thing that happened through these past 3 films and 15 years of our lives. Let's look over that furnace scene real quick. You know, we all know, Pixar would never kill these guys, even if they were going to kill off one character. Oh wait, they already did that! They would A, apparently not let it make an impact at all for some reason, and B, would never kill them all off, especially at the same time. We know that, and they knew we knew that. But they put it in anyway to get an unnecessarily dark, tear-jerking scene. Look, I know that there are many movies that have to put their characters in intense and even life-threatening danger. I mean, we have to have a conflict. But to have all the characters in a family movie act like, oh no, we're all gonna die, I guess we have to just hold hands and accept it, is stupid. And most insulting of all, they don't even get out of it themselves and are saved by a freaking Deus Ex Machina. Give me a break. And finally, the ending. That ending. Now, yes, it's sappy and stupid. Yes, he's giving the toys to a kid we barely know that they tried to force us to care about in this movie. Yes, Andy gave them up way too easily for someone who loved them so much. And they drag it out so long and it just keeps on going. They want to make sure there's not a dry eye in the house. But for me, it's not even the emotion here that gets me, though it is terrible. It's the fact that now all the adventures Woody and Buzz have gone on mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. Their entire lives were about staying with this kid, making him happy. It's all Woody could think about in the first film and what Buzz convinced him of in the next. And they basically broke out of the Pixar equivalent of Arkham Asylum to get back to him this time. And what do they get for all the crap they've been through? They get handed over to someone who's a total stranger to most of them, with barely a moment of hesitation. That may be the biggest screw you to both the film's protagonists and audience that I have ever seen. Everything they went through, everything we went through with them, worthless. Completely worthless. The only thing that we learn in the end of this is that no matter how hard you fight for something you love, fight all your deepest fears to get back to it, and decide to hope for a future for 15 years or more, it'll still mean nothing in the end. And this is the animated movie that people claim is the best of all time. This is the film so many call a masterpiece. And this is the film that countless say wraps up a trilogy the way it should be wrapped up. I've never understood this, and I never will. And that is why I hate Toy Story 3. I hope after these last 2 videos you have even the smallest shred of respect for me left at all. But maybe I'll learn it back next week when I go back into Mystery Science and Riff Tracks territory. And trust me, I have plenty of videos lined up about those guys, and I'm very excited about them. And also expect sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I don't have an official date yet, for the next video in this series where I'm going to talk about why I hate Inside Out. So that little last shred of respect might go anyway. Alright, but either way, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.